Here goes my first attempt at trying to show how I paint on video. Now, if you can see, this board's already prepared. There is a design on there. You can just about see the masking fluids. It's all dry, so it goes yellower when it's dry. So if I place that down there, make sure it's within the camera shot. And then I start off with a sponge, a good old-fashioned natural sponge, and very lightly I wet the whole paper. Now, what this is a street scene with an underground. Now I have my reference picture, but you can't see that because it's out of shot. I'm going to choose a few colours. Normally when I do a watercolour wash, I start off with a few colours because I find if I use too many, it turns into mud, and that's the last thing I want. I just realised bits of it because they're annoying me. Right, so I am going to use watercolour paints, a very little bit of cerulean blue because there's not a lot of sky. It's mainly going to be brown in the dark, probably, which colour shall I use? I think I will use an ochre for the brownish areas because they're quite light brown in the light. I can always make things darker, but it's difficult to actually lighten them up once you've got the colour on. So I shall do that, and if I can find my indigo, I shall use a little bit of indigo for the darker areas, but I may well use some other colours. So I've got my paints in there. Hopefully you can see them. Yep, there's my colours in there. And now I don't use small brushes. I don't know the meaning of the word small brushes. That's the sort of size brush I use. Those two are probably my favourites, but I've got some slightly smaller ones as this is quite a tiny picture. But if you're doing washes, the last thing you want is to be using tiny brushes, because you want to get, for this technique, you need to get the watercolour on as fast as you can. And if you spend too long over it, you will lose some of the texture you get with using the cling film. So as I say, this is very fast. These are actually too big for even for me for this one, but I'm not too precious about where it goes. It goes everywhere, and I say I try not to use too much, because if I use too many colours, I end up with a big mess. Now that's gone really dark. There's possibility. Okay, so we're ready to continue now. The cling film's doing its work. It possibly could stay on a little bit longer, but it'll be okay for this, what we're doing now. I'm going to apply acrylic inks. This is FW. There's also Magicolor, Liquitex. Sorry, that's not Liquitex, that's Schminky. That's Liquitex, and that's Schminky Aerocolor. They're probably my favourites because they're nice and fine, and they are lovely to use. So let's see what the cling film has done, shall we? A little bit wet, I think, but oh yes, far too wet. Let me just mop some of that up, because I'm not going to be able to do the next stage with it. I'm actually going to use a kitchen towel, because you can get some interesting effects with those. So I shall do that. And again, a bit more on here. Okay, now I've got something to work with there. Now, I use the colours neat, straight from the bottle. I don't bother with brushes. I'm actually going to start up here, because there's a little bit up here that I think we could do something interesting with. It's not too far. So that's sepia. I'm going to use a nice dark blue now, go around the bit on the underground sign. I'm not using too much at the moment, because I like to see what happens when it's left to move around. And I'm also going to do a bit around there, and I've just realised I've forgotten to mask a bit, but it's too late now. So I might have to do something creative with that later, but that's not an issue at the moment. Right, use a bit more down here. We've got some railings down the bottom here, so I'll try and pick them out a bit. And down there. The masking is actually quite fragile when it's applied, and I've managed to damage a bit there, so that's going to be tricky to get to do exactly what I want. So it's going to end up being something different. This happens quite a lot with masking. I apply it, but because it's so fragile, it's very easy to just damage the surface if you rub it too hard. Now there's a bus there which you can't see, so let's make it a bit more visible, shall we? These will probably bleed out and be a lot paler than they are at the moment, but it's nice to have the colours in at this level because it really just helps define the piece and give it a bit more character. So now I'm going to have a little bit along there that needs a bit of attention, just to define, colour out some of this area here. It's very tricky at the moment to actually get the right amount of ink in. You can easily overdo it with ink, so you have to go in, do a bit and then leave it and then come back again, and that's the hard bit because it's very easy to just carry on and then you end up with a nasty puddle of ink and no definition and nothing works how you want it to. So I shall try and refrain from doing that. Now I actually think I'm going to use some purple on this because there's a nice shadowy area around here. If I can get some definition to the shadows, it might work quite well. Now this here is a little bit dry, so I'm going to have to do something with that to make it behave as I would like it to. So just put a bit more colour in there. Let's have some colour in there. As you see, I have lots of fun when I'm doing this bit. Now, if I now use a water bottle, and it's just a spray bottle with normal tap water in, and I'll just spritz it a little bit there. The trick with watercolour is balancing, using too much and too little. It's very easy to overdo it, and then you reap the consequences if you do. So watercolour, despite people loving watercolour, is not the most forgiving of media, and anybody who uses it any great length will realise that you can never really control it. You just try and persuade it to do what you want it to, and hopefully that will give you what you want. Okay, it's a bit, I'm getting to a point now where I'm going to have to stop, otherwise I'm going to risk ruining it. Speak English. And let's have a bit more dark up there. There's a whole load of windows there, and it'd be nice to actually be able to see them. So there might be something I need to do later on, so I'm just going to put a bit in now. A lot of the colour I'm putting on now might seem intense, but it will bleed out, so actually it'll be a lot more toned down than you would expect it to be. Now I've got a bit up there that needs a bit of detail, and already that's drying out. And what I haven't done, and this is quite dark around here, there's a lot going on, so I'm going to add a little bit of salt to that. I like my salt, if anybody who's ever seen me work knows. So I'm just going to put that on there, hopefully get some nice texture on what is pavement. It'll hopefully lighten up some of the bits around there as well, and maybe a little bit around there because it's getting a bit dark around there. I quite like that. See, I'm losing the blue completely, but that's fine. We can live with that. Okay, and I think I'm going to stop there. I will need to do more on that, but I need to let that dry now, so there's not a lot I can do at the moment. So that's the first stage of inking on my painting. And a little bit more, because I've realised there's a few more bits I can do now. So I'm going to carry on painting. A little bit more around there. I'm just going to get a little bit of colour and black in there. It's all quite dark at the front of this picture. I'd quite like to keep that. Something better there. There's another railing here which hasn't been defined yet, so we shall go around and start marking this one out. I'm ink in there. I'm using sepia at the moment, in case you're wondering. This is where we lost some of the masking, so this could be interesting when we get to cleaning it up to see exactly what's happened and what's been defined where. That's probably enough. the dark colours. Just check my picture. Oh, no, I've got a lovely little purple in there. I'll try and get in there. There's another one over here. I'll find it. After I've been painting for a while, they tend to merge into each other, so I'm not always sure which object and what I'm trying to bring out and what I'm trying to make disappear. It all sort of becomes one and merges into each other. You see around here, you can't really see any of the masking. You can't see it on the screen. Well, I certainly can't see it either, so it's going to be an interesting rediscovery once we start cleaning it up. And that's the beauty of these pictures, is very often I think I know what I've got, and then I start pulling the masking off and I realise things aren't quite where I was expecting them to be. Because from me doing it and painting, a lot's happened to confuse the image. Okay, so I don't know what to do here and there. I'll apologise for anybody earlier on. I said that the bus was blue for some reason. I realise now I've played it back. It wasn't blue, of course, it's red. It's very red. Not quite so red as it was when we started, but still very red. Now I'm going to try one more thing. I don't normally use white, but because I've forgotten quite a crucial bit of masking, I'm going to need to put a bit of light in. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to see. I'll get the effect I want with the underground sign round here. I'm just going to pause while I look for my white. So I found my white. It was hiding in a cupboard. This will look very white now, because it is very white. Obviously I'm not quite going to work as well as if I've masked it that much. I really didn't want that bit to be white, and I'm a bit cross with myself that I forgot to mask it. But it happens. I'm often asked, do I use white? And generally speaking, I try not to, because I prefer the white of the paper. But every now and then, like in this particular occasion, I need to. And that's what I do. Or I'll use my ruling pen to apply it if it's a fine line somewhere in the details. Right, now I really am going to stop the painting for today, and I shall carry on again probably tomorrow. So after the painting, this is what you can see, the pools. You can see how it's pooling there. It's all shiny and wet at the moment. And the trick is obviously not to use too much in one go, because if you use too much in one go, they all pool into each other and you have a blobby mess. Okay, so now I'm going to clean up the final picture. As you can see, it's all nice and dry now, all nice and warm to touch. It's the best way of telling if masking fluid is dry by just touching it. If it's warm to the touch, then it should be nice and dry, so you shouldn't rip your paper. So I'm going to start clearing this up now, and this is the fun bit. This is where the magic happens. So this one should clean up fairly well just using my fingers. And so if I start doing that, we'll see how it goes. You can hear the salt being pulled off. And there we get some peeling bits now. I've got a large area here. Let's see what we get. Always good fun to be able to pull it like that. I see it all coming off quite easily, this one. Just get rid of some of that salt in the layers. And it will all come up like that. And peel that lovely bit off there. And so most of it you can normally remove with your fingers like this. The more salt you've got on it, the more of a tendency it is to sort of rub at your fingers, so it feels like you've been rubbing your fingers on sandpaper for a while. But this one's not too bad because I'm not using an awful lot of salt this time. And that's cleaned up pretty well first time. Now, there are some bits where it hasn't quite come off, so then I go in with this tool, which is a scraper foil tool. I'll show you there, you won't be able to see that. Hopefully you'll see that on the video. And then that's really good for spots where you've got, if you, like me, use acrylic ink, it can pool and form large lumps, and this is just a perfect tool for getting those bits off. As you can work in where it's caked on and get the point in. It's better than using a knife, because I tend to find if you use a knife you're more likely to rip the paper. And these are fairly easily available. They're not an expensive tool by any means, but it's worth getting one if you do a lot of masking and you're doing this sort of thing. That's cleaned up quite well. Normally they don't clean up quite this quickly, so it's quite good. You can see where the ink's thicker, it's formed a barrier. Now I normally feel around, because you can normally tell where the masking fluid's still there, because you can feel it with your fingers. No, there's a bit there, so I'll just use the tool up there a bit to get rid of that. There's a flag on the top of that building there. And a little bit of detail there that needs cleaning up. Another thing I use, which can be really helpful, is the good old-fashioned putty rubber. And that's quite good, especially when you've forgotten where you put your masking fluid, because it finds the bits that you've forgotten about. And I think we're there. There's not a lot on this left to do. Couple of bits. Oh, there's a bit down there. Let me see where if I go along there. I'm taking my time just to get around that bit there. I'm going to use a putty rubber again because I think that's well. Clean up the last few bits there. I can't feel anything else. But there's a little bit round there as well. Like I said earlier though, this unfortunately the masking fluids come off here before I started painting, so this one probably won't work as nice and clean. I tend to find what I can do is just, again, go around with the scraper foil tool and just scratch it out, and it does clean up fairly well. Not quite as nice as if it was masked up, and you know what I was saying about not ripping? Occasionally, if you get over enthusiastic like that, that sort of thing happens. So I shall probably have to touch that up with a bit of ink, and then that will repair that bit. But I think that's done, and that's how you clean up your picture.